Hello everybody, Adrian Plass here.
Yes, and Bridget. Hello.
And this is number 98 in Sounding the Shallows.
It's quite a number, really, isn't it?
Gosh, there's a
98.
lot of shallows.
Yes, yeah.
Oh dear. And obviously still on everyone's mind. And for me at night, my brain has been in turmoil over the whole Ukraine thing. And I think over this week particularly, the children, seeing the faces of children and in their parents' faces, the fear that home has gone and that they don't know what home will mean in the future, who will live there. And we're in the middle at the moment of trying to move house because of the particular needs we have because of my
You're
lack
sick
of
of
mobility.
saying my mobility
Yes, I am.
problems,
Fed
aren't
up
you?
with
But
that, yeah.
they are rather extreme now.
But we do need to
So-
do that, and it did start me thinking, looking at those children and their parents, and I mean we've moved loads of times over the years, and I started to make a list in my head the other day, and I got really fed up with myself when I kept leaving things out and or forgetting the number of a house in a road, but I was wondering about the essence of home. What that means, and I think we mentioned before when Moley in Wind in the Willows smells his home, and he suddenly all he wants is to go there, and Ratty goes with him, and we talked a bit about that and how Ratty made it good for Moley by being impressed by the things that were in his home.
Well, it's the things that are in your home, isn't it, that really are your home, I think. I mean, I was thinking somebody came to visit us a while ago and said how odd it was to see one of the pictures in particular in a different place, in a different room.
In our house, you mean?
Yeah. And of course, as you said, for the people leaving Ukraine, you know, those children will probably have been told to choose a toy or a thing, and then they're going to grow out of that thing, but that's who they were and what they chose at the time when they had to leave.
What do you think home has meant for us over the years? And we have moved many times. Obviously, us. I mean, you probably want me to trail along with you, and I don't mind you coming with me, and our children. But seriously, I mean, I remember at a meeting we were at once where we weren't leading it, but the people were asked what would be the thing they would go straight for if their house was burning down or something like that.
People always used to say photographs, but of course now it's a little bit different, really, because everybody's photos are on their phones.
Oh, yeah, everything's
so I think
changed
everyone would say
enormously,
my
yeah.
phone because it contains my whole world. What were you going to say? You were going to say photographs, were you?
Well, I was going to say they all said photographs, and although nowadays is different, that must still mean something profound, mustn't it? That what you're taking with you is what? A reflection of who you have been, of who you are? I don't know. Nowadays, I mean, our grandson, Rafa, for short for Raphael, has his entire life documented almost inch by inch.
I know. So you could say to him when he was an adult, you could be unbelievably boring and say, now this is what you were doing at 2:30 on Thursday afternoon, but in fact at 3 o'clock on Thursday afternoon you were doing something. Look, this is what you were doing then.
Well, that's right,
It's quite intense.
They're very spontaneous pictures, aren't they? Picture of him exploring the world, and
Well, because they're just
All
part
those
of his
things.
life, aren't they? Rather than being a set up thing in a studio. Do you remember that nightmare? I just quickly talking about photographs. Do you remember when we decided we would have a formal photograph taken of our family because we felt we hadn't got too many of those, and our eldest son was 14 and self-conscious and uncomfortable, and the photographer trying to make
I
us.
can't remember if we mentioned this last time, but
Why? I don't know.
well, it's worth repeating anyway, because we were talking about it with our children recently, and the moment came when the photographer, despairing of making our cool oldest son smile, said, What can I say that'll make you smile? Pause. Girls. And of course, then we all fell about laughing.
Yeah, so it had the desired effect.
And whether he intended it like
Yeah.
that, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right, here's another question then. C.S. Lewis said, sometimes we feel homesick for something we've never had, but want very much indeed. What do you think he meant by that?
Well, I don't know. I should think it varies, wouldn't it, for everybody? I'm sure for some people it will be a place. For some people it will be maybe being with people they've loved and who've died. I don't know, really, Adrian. I haven't really thought about it, but I suppose it's a sense of being somewhere where you can finally relax, maybe, or be you, or just like all the very best moments when everything's wonderful and everybody's laughing together around a kitchen table. Yeah. I don't know. What about you then?
I don't know. I don't actually know what he meant, but I think he might have been hinting that we have a sense of what the ultimate home is, where God is, where we will be, where we'll be.
Well, I think that's what
together.
I meant, really, Adrian.
Yeah.
One of those moments when everything is in tune with it, itself, and for just a very little while, there is just complete loveliness.
Yeah.
I think quite a lot of people who are scrambling with youngish children at the moment, or with difficult situations, or being in that middling bit where your parents are very old and you're sort of neither quite one nor the other, might think, well, chance will be a fine thing. But I think we all know those moments where just for a little while everything is in harmony, and I suppose that's what I was meaning, really.
Yeah. And for some people, of course, home is a very dark memory. Or it depends what you mean by home, but the place you lived in, the people you lived with, the way they treated you. For some people, and we've known this through working with children in care over the years, you have to recreate an understanding of what real home means, a place where you're loved and you love others and you don't have to try too hard and the rules aren't stuck on the wall and all those things.
And even that's difficult because home changes, doesn't it? I mean, I was thinking that, at primary, when you're sort of primary age, home is your refuge. Home is the place where, you scramble to get home sometimes, either because you've done something wonderful and you want them to know about it and you haven't been able to boast, but you can a little bit when you get home, or because the tragedy of the day that you have contained within yourself is just bursting to come out. And where can you tell somebody about the terrible day, the terrible thing you've happened, that maybe you weren't picked for something you thought you were going to be picked for, or maybe you've done something really stupid, and home is the place where you can talk about it. But then sometimes as you get older, and this is quite interesting because it becomes much more difficult to communicate what you're feeling because you're working it out and you're working out who you are. And I think, we talk about church being home, don't we, quite often? But I think that can happen at the beginning. It's a place where you feel you just can be yourself. And then sometimes it becomes much more difficult to, as you're going in a different direction, maybe, to the way other people are going in their thinking. Or
there's a huge appetite to belong, isn't there, in many, many people?
I think in all of us, wouldn't you think, a bit?
And so you embark on that journey, and it feels wonderful. And you're right. Then it can seem quite difficult after that. I often we talk about Mary and Martha a lot, and Lazarus and Jesus. Apparently, as far as we can see, having a sort of home there, and it says somewhere Jesus loved Mary and Martha and Lazarus, and the suggestion is it was a special place, where
and it was
he could be himself.
It was the place, wasn't it, where on his way to Jerusalem he stopped there and they had a meal.
Yeah.
And that must have been an extraordinary atmosphere. Lazarus back to life,
Yeah.
sitting there at the table.
Yes.
Martha probably quite happily cooking that time, and for her friends, and Mary being part of it, and Jesus and some of the disciples. Probably crammed round a table. I mean, I think it would have been quite a low table, wouldn't it? But crammed round it. I mean, I can't believe Mary and Martha and Lazarus lived in a huge house. I've never pictured it like that anyway.
No.
But home.
Yeah. 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 And sometimes it is the essence of home that is suggested by things. And as you were saying that, I was thinking of the water turned into wine at Cana.
The wedding, yeah.
Yeah, and I was thinking of Mary coming to her son, to Jesus, and saying, so we don't know how she said it, but saying something like, "They've got no wine," and him looking at her and thinking, "Oh no, this is not the time for this sort of thing," and saying, "No, this is not what I'm here for," something along those lines, and her looking at him very intently and seeing what she knew was going on in him, which was that he would do something, and turning to his people and saying, do whatever he tells you. And that moment of understanding, of comprehension of where someone else is coming from and what they're about is very precious, isn't it? And I remember we were speaking at a friend's funeral, weren't we, a while ago, and I asked the partner who remained alive, what will you miss most? What I suppose made home for her. And she said, "Oh, well, what I'll miss most, I think, is having an eye to catch. Seeing someone at the other side of the room and being able to just lift your eyebrow just a half a millimetre and to know that the other person is thinking, yes, I know exactly what you're thinking. You're thinking, how long do we have to stay here before we leave? Or isn't it wonderful to be here? Or whatever it is. But to have that understanding, that comprehension between you that creates home wherever you are, whatever you're doing. I mean, I think we do have that. And we have had. We've been very fortunate in that.
Pretty fortunate,
that way.
really. But yeah. But you can have it as well with very close friends, can't you, who know you inside out, and that sometimes can feel the same, really. You're somewhere, and but you have that connection. So is that what you're saying, that home is for you, really, the connection between people, and it doesn't actually have to be a place? Is that what you're...
I don't think it has to be a place for me, but that's why I was thinking about moving, and I wonder what other people's experience has been. That when you talk about moving, you think about another building, a different front door, a different room to walk into, a different garden shape, perhaps, all sorts of things. But I don't think that's what my mind turns to, although we're always blathering on together about which compromises we don't mind making for our house and all that. But the major compromises, I mean, for you and I, are that we'll both be there, aren't they? And I mean, I meant the major condition of being there.
The major compromises that we'll both be there.
No, for it to be home is that we'll both be there. That's the thing we want, and we want family and all those things. So no, it isn't a place, but there's great. It's a very childlike fun, isn't it, when you have got a new place?
Well, I was thinking, even when we years ago used to go camping with the family, and you'd make your little home, wouldn't you? In the tent, you'd tie your toilet roll onto the one of the bits at the front of the tent, and you'd decide where you're going to put your books and where your torch was going to be, and I remember that being great fun. I mean, it didn't quite work, because I remember we had great difficulty persuading our children that the idea was that they put their wellies on when they went out of the tent and then took them off when they came in the tent in order to keep the tent dry.
That's right,
and that one never seemed to quite work. And we always had sopping wet socks hanging all over the guy ropes and things. But that idea of home, and of creating something that is a little safe place, I think was always really important. Making a little house. I mean, children have always loved making camps, haven't they?
Yeah.
Of various sorts, because there's something about making a little house of some sort, whether it's of, I don't know, bits, I don't know. We used to have a field near us which was never cut down, and so you could trample it down. I don't know whether we should have done, but we did, into sort of areas with, so you left the high bits high and you had your flat bits. And that became home in the summer holidays, and you'd visit each other's camps. And but there must be something in the human spirit that wants to create home, even as a child.
Well, I can remember with, I think, all of our children playing a game, sitting on the stairs mainly, I think, and I'd get a cloth and put it over our heads, a child's head and my head, and so you'd have this space inside the cloth, and you'd point in the dark to a little corner, and you'd say, that's where we'll put our table, and that's where we'll put our chairs, and that's where we'll put our bookcase. Yeah. And we loved that. We relished that feeling that we were in charge of this tiny, tiny home, where the things that matters most to us were already there, because the two of us, whoever we were there under the blanket. And
it's going to be awfully important, isn't it, for hosts of these people who've had to flee Ukraine, to allow them to create home. That's going to be quite a challenge, I think, because I'm sure people are going to want to be very kind and want to share their home, but there's just such a danger of trying to impose what your idea of home is on other people who are so different, or might be different, and have been through so much, and allowing them to have space to create their own sense of home and safety. It's going to be an interesting challenge, really.
Yeah. There's a picture we had, isn't there? Not of this crisis, but of another crisis where there is a whole family. There's a little small child, and then a boy with absolute, I can't think what the word would be, a fear, determination, love, angst, all those things in his face as he lays his hand on the little child's head, and the mother is there, and they're all fighting to retain the thing that is most important to them. I must find it. We've still got it somewhere.
It makes
in a house.
I mean, you were saying about putting a cloth over. I was thinking about David and his Psalms. Not all of them, but the ones that he wrote while he was on the run, and the one that says, "Hide me under the shadow of your wing." And there must have been times when physically maybe he was in a cave or he was hiding somewhere, but he felt completely safe. I'm sure not all the time. And there's a great danger in reading a psalm like that and thinking, oh, we ought to feel like that all the time. But there obviously were moments when it wasn't that different to him than what you were saying about creating, that, he was safe under the shadow of God's wing. He felt that he could create a sense of home, of safety, if that's what we mean by home, under the shadow of God's wing, just for a little while. And we've known that, haven't we? I mean, we've known it at Scargill House, and then there's Lee Abbey and we know other places where they create like a little oasis for people, a safe little stopping place where for just a little while you can be under the shadow of God's wing, and you can just be there for a wee while before facing I think it's the outside world.
One of the things we learned very early on, wasn't it, that if you don't create a safe place for people, then they're not going to really get as much from it as they could otherwise.
No.
If you remember the time when we had a meal, and I asked the question, how many people here tell lies? Why I did that, I don't know, a stupid question I asked. Questions like that, and everyone put their hands up.
Oh, that was children and adults.
And
a little group of people, And
afterwards I said to you, why do all these people who tell lies decide to tell the truth about telling lies? And we decided, didn't we, that it was because they felt safe.
Yeah.
And the best, one of the best aspects of home, whether it's a church home or a house home or a home in the wilderness, is that you are with people who aren't going to judge you and want to hear what you're saying, and where you're going to be looking after each other.
Yes, and I mean, we try to hang on to the belief that applies to God as well, that when we saw Jesus, we saw God, and that therefore that very thing you're talking about, ideally, and most of us can't do it all the time, but we feel as comfortable and as safe and as able to say what on earth is going on, and can for that little while be at home, be sitting around the kitchen table.
Yeah.
It's not minimising it, is it? It's just those moments are so important.
No. C.S. Lewis said, if a perfect world ever exists, if you look down from heaven, you'll see a man reading a book.
Ah, well, there you go.
It doesn't need to be a dramatic thing.
No.
By the way, we are recovering from our COVID, for those who have
nice.
been so sympathetic.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's quite a thing, the COVID community now. We didn't belong to it before.
No, we
and
didn't.
I was at the community cafe, where I help, once a week, and everybody had it. And there was a general discussion as to where you were on the spectrum of COVID-itis.
The
or
COVID
whatever
club.
Yes, yeah. I know.
Yeah. But thank you for your sympathy for those who've written and expressed encouragement and concern,
and lots of interesting little things in emails. Perhaps we'll have a look at those again next week.
If you have any stories about moving home or losing home or what that means,
that would be so interesting to hear.
Okay,
it would.
We'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Bye
Bye bye.